My name is Mara Aldis, and for 11 years, I kept a dead man's promise running through a piece of equipment that should have failed 100 times. Over. I worked maintenance on Relay Spire 7, a sun-bleached hull bolted to a survey platform on the edge of the Kesson Drift, where the daylight never really ends because the system has 3 stars and none of them set together. My job was simple on paper. Keep the dish aligned, keep the power cell fed, make sure one specific message kept going out, every morning, at the same recorded second, into a stretch of space where nothing had answered back since the Calder Run went dark. The Calder Run was a colony transport. 41 families. It stopped transmitting on a Tuesday and never started again, and the official finding, 2 years later, was that it was gone. Debris field. Radiation signature. The kind of language that closes a file. But before the transport went dark, the last thing it sent us was a woman named Renata Okafor reading a bedtime story to her daughter over the comm because the relay link was the only way she could put the kid to sleep on the long haul. The recording cut off mid-sentence. Nobody ever heard the end of it. Her husband stayed behind on the station. His name was Joseph Okafor, and he was not, by any account I ever heard, a sentimental man. He'd been a load-balancing engineer his whole working life, the kind of person who trusted a checklist over a feeling. But he rigged the relay to rebroadcast the recording back along the transport's last known heading, every single day, same time, same signal strength. In case the ship was drifting dark but not dead, in case the comm array came back online, and the first thing it heard was his wife's voice picking up where she'd left off. He kept the dish trued to 1/10 of a degree by hand for the first 2 years, before the servo motors were finally repaired. Because he didn't trust a machine to care about the heading the way he did. He died 4 years into it, alone in the equipment bay, and the duty log shows he'd logged that morning's broadcast before he ever called for help. I inherited the relay along with his maintenance ledgers, 7 years of his handwriting in the margins, and I kept it running because by then it didn't feel like mine to stop. I told myself I'd do it for 1 year, then it was 5, then it stopped being a decision at all and became the shape of my mornings. Coffee, dish alignment, the 6 words going out into a sky that never answered. I want to be honest about how small the detail was that the catalogers eventually cared about. It wasn't the story. It wasn't Renata's voice. It was a single printed slip that came out of the relay's diagnostic spool. Every morning, the kind of thing you'd crumple without looking at twice. 6 words and a number. 0700 GST. Cycle 4313. Unbroken. That was the whole slip. A timestamp and a count. I had a drawer of them going back over a decade because the man who'd built the system wanted proof, even after he was gone, that nobody had let the cycle slip even once. The catalogers found us before I found them. Their fleet doesn't announce itself with weapons or light. It announces itself with paperwork. One of their scout craft sat outside the spire for 6 days logging the broadcast before anything came aboard. And when something finally did, it wasn't a soldier. It was an envoy, tall and narrow-shouldered, the color of wet slate, with eyes that moved independently of each other, like they were each running their own audit. It came through the airlock without ceremony, folded itself into the spare chair across from my console, like it had measured the chair's dimensions in advance and found them barely adequate, and introduced itself with a designation I couldn't pronounce. Then it asked, through a translator stone clipped to its collar, why I had logged the same content 73,400 and some odd times without alteration. I told it the content didn't matter. The interval mattered. It didn't understand that. I watched it not understand that for a long moment, head tilted, translator stone humming. Catalogers measure worth by information density. Every signal they've ever indexed either grows, changes, or resolves. A message that never varies, in their accounting, isn't a message. It's noise with good manners. They'd flagged us as an anomaly, purely because the precision was too clean to be an accident and too repetitive to be data. It had been sitting in their unresolved bin for 9 years. I pulled the drawer of slips and laid maybe 40 of them on the console, fanned out so it could see the dates climbing. I told it what the man who built the relay had told me. The one time I asked him why he didn't just let it go. He'd said, if she's out there and she only hears it once, I want it to be exactly the way she remembers it, not a version that drifted because I got tired. So every morning, same second, same volume, same 6 words on the slip, whether anybody believed it mattered or not. The envoy picked up one of the slips, turned it over with two long fingers, like it was checking for a watermark. Then it asked me, and this is the part that stayed with me longer than anything else that happened that year. It asked whether the unbroken cycle had cost me anything: sleep, resources, years. I said yes, all three. It set the slip down very carefully, the way you'd set down something you'd just realized was heavier than it looked, and it told me, almost like an apology, that cataloger doctrine had no category for a signal whose entire value was that someone refused to let it stop. They had categories for warnings, for distress calls, for cultural artifacts, for proof of life. They didn't have one for a promise kept past the point of reasonable hope. It said it would need to petition for a new classification before it could authorize a search vector, because without a category, the fleet couldn't justify the fuel. I didn't argue doctrine. I just kept the relay running while the petition crawled through whatever process they have for inventing a new kind of truth. It took them 4 more months. Then a cataloger survey ship found the Calder Run's drift trail, 11 light minutes off its last logged heading, exactly where a ship with one dead engine and a slow spin would end up after 11 years, and exactly the kind of math nobody bothers running unless the search radius is anchored by a number precise enough to trust. Cycle 4. 313 was that number. It told them how long to draw the cone. It told them where not to give up early. They found 6 survivors in cold sleep, kept alive on backup cycling that had almost nothing left to give. One of them was Renata Okafor's daughter, grown into a young woman who didn't remember her mother's voice clearly anymore because she'd been small enough when the recording cut off that the memory had worn soft at the edges the way memories do. When they revived her, the catalogers, in their flat, clinical decency, played her the relay broadcast before anyone told her anything else. They wanted her reaction logged. I understand why now, even if I didn't like it at the time. They needed a category for what they'd found, and they got it the moment she heard the first line and finished the sentence before the recording did, in a voice that cracked exactly where her mother's had cracked the night the link went dead. I was there for it, patched in by request, because the envoy insisted the woman who'd kept the cycle unbroken deserved to hear it land. I didn't say anything during the playback. I didn't need to. The girl, she wasn't a girl anymore, but I'll call her that, because that's who the recording had been made for, looked straight at the relay feed and said, "It never stopped?" I told her it never stopped. 11 years, 290 days, same second every morning. She asked me to keep one more thing running after that, just once, just to close the loop the way her father never got the chance to. I rebroadcast the message one final time, full strength, full volume, out toward empty space, where nothing was listening anymore, because the only person it had ever been meant for was finally, after 11 years, close enough to hear it in person instead, the catalogers filed the new classification under a term that translates, roughly, as sustained intent. I've still got the last slip from that final broadcast in my drawer. It doesn't say Cycle 4314, it just says complete.